Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 6 of the Crubcast. I am the Golden Bolt. My name's Kevin. I'm here with 3 of our wonderful co-crubbers today. That's just become the official term. First up, to my right, or by my right, your right, I don't know. To my other side over here, we have Wolf Chaos-on, if you are watching the video feed. Hi, Sean.
Hi. How's it going? How's it popping?
Good. I think we're all popping. I don't know what that means. Above him is Moriarty. Hi, M.
What's up, painters? How we doing today?
I don't like hypebeast intros for non-gamers. And the host of today's episode is Nicco, also known as All Hail Buckets, sitting right above me.
What is good, painters? How are we doing today?
Why is this a thing?
Because we're painters. We're all painters now.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, fellas. Kevin, you already introduced yourself, right?
I did. Thank you, though.
All right. Yeah. Gotta think about these things, right?
Yeah, I mean, last
fellas.
week Justin forgot, so it's valid.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, no, but he's so famous, everybody knows him already.
That's true.
Yeah. It's like ingrained the moment you are born.
Yeah, I guess so. Fellas, how we doing today? How's everybody feeling?
Pretty okay. Surprisingly not as tired. Surprisingly not as tired for me.
Yeah.
But I mean, I had a lot shorter of a drive to and from too many games than Moriarty had. For those that are listening,
I walked in the door 5 minutes before we started.
That too.
Exactly.
Yeah. For those that are watching this in the post-upload on YouTube or in the audio realm, we are recording this just about a day after all of us have returned from the Too Many Games convention in Philadelphia, or the Philadelphia area. We had a really good time, and a lot of our memes and we're too early in the episode to say poop posts are on Twitter. If you find the Crub Twitter or find any of our Twitters, you can see us do a bunch of stupid stuff and hang out with other creator pals and have a good time.
I actually think that's an apropos name.
Poop posts?
Poop posts? Yeah, from Crub, okay. I think that's an apropos name.
That's valid.
If I'm honest with you.
That's valid. But we already talked about a lot of the stuff we did at Too Many Games in the pre-show. For those that don't know, we stream these live over on Twitch at twitch.tv/crub_official. For now, probably be on YouTube soon enough. We have exclusive pre- and post shows there for the live crowd. Hang out, talk, chat, see what you folks want us to chat about, topics in the news space and all that fun stuff. But what are we here doing today, Nicco?
Well, first of all, the pre and post show is where you see the real personalities come out. So if you're interested in that, tune into that. But
yeah, we're being fake for you, listeners.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's completely fake.
Oh, it's all scripted. Everything is all of it's scripted, top to bottom,
right down to the ums.
Right. Yeah, Sean, say your line.
Which one? Hold on, I lost my spot. Right down to the Okay, say your Which? Okay, I'm back.
No, it's okay. It was all planned. That was all written in. Sean, say your line.
Did I ask?
Good man. All right. Fellas, today we're going to talk about evolution. Today we're going to talk about how our tastes have changed and evolved over the past 10 to 15 years. Just because I think recently I've been reflecting a lot on my own tastes and sort of why I like what I like in media overall, right? Video games, music, movies, television, all of it. And I think it is a worthwhile exercise for anyone to do because you get to learn a little bit more about yourself, you get to learn a little bit more about art, and it helps you kind of delve a little bit deeper into what brings you joy and what makes you happy. Does that make sense, fellas?
It does. I agree with what you said, because if you don't look back and feel ashamed of your old self, or you haven't changed, I feel bad for you.
Yeah.
At least one of those two things. You don't have to be ashamed of yourself, but you probably should be if you're listening here to the Crubcast. I'll say it. I'll say what we're all thinking.
If you're anything like me, you should not be like I was years and years ago. Yeah.
I aim to be like Nicco from years and years ago.
Oh, that's a low bar, dude.
It is. I want to see how low I can go.
Oh my god, it's like the limbo, the life limbo.
God,
I peaked in 4th grade.
Oh my
god! I don't know why
god,
you're laughing. I was serious.
God. So speaking of laughing, I have asked you guys to bring in a couple pieces of media, preferably from eclectic media. No pun intended, but bring a couple of those in that you were consuming 10 to 15 years ago.
What was the pun? What was the pun that you didn't intend?
Well, the media, and then the medium as in like this is what we are watching and consuming versus media, the medium in which it is.
You know what? Maybe I don't want to be Nicco anymore.
Yeah, you wouldn't survive a second in here, dude. You wouldn't survive in my brain.
God.
No, nobody would. Nobody would. Anyway, the assignment was to bring in a couple things from 10 to 15 years ago and just reflect on how our tastes have changed. So I am going to start with Kevin. Kevin, what have you brought into us today, or where does this discussion start for you?
10 years ago, I watched a little show called Breaking Bad. And 10 years later, I watched a different show called Better Call Saul.
Okay, so not much change there. That's good.
That's the only thing I'm going to say this entire episode. No, I have a couple, but it's fascinating with that particular case because it has been 10 years and the show just ended again, 9 years after the fact that Breaking Bad ended, Saul ended. And the fact that they were able to keep a continuous universe going for what was 08, 09? Started around the writer's strike, so 07, 08. For 15 years and maintain that level of quality is genuinely incredible. But that wasn't the one I was actually going to talk about. One of the ones that I played 10 or 15 years ago is a series that is dead now, and that's Halo. Halo's dead.
Halo's dead.
Oh, yeah, it sure is.
Absolutely dead.
If you pour one out for the homie.
If you watched the, he actually poured one out for those that are listening.
For the audio listeners, Sean actually dumped some of his water out.
I don't think he has a trash can there. I think he just poured that on his desk.
No, I don't.
Great.
It's okay. The cats will look it up.
So for those that don't, he doesn't have cats. He has Trav.
Oh, that's right. Travel Zamboni it off the floor.
Yeah, he's gonna freebase my water.
So, for those that didn't watch the Xbox showcase a few weeks back during the usual E3 summer gaming season that no longer can be called E3, they didn't show anything about Halo off in that Xbox showcase. Instead, about 2 days later, they showed off a trailer on YouTube for Season 4 of Halo Infinite.
What's fascinating about that is that there's one extra facet to it that changes it a little bit, which is that season actually started a week before the showcase.
Oh.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
That changes it entirely.
That makes it so much worse.
So it was out, and they didn't even put a sizzle reel out to say, hey, this is a thing. The game's not dead, folks. Wow.
Yeah.
Halo.
So if you watched the showcase, you saw as much Halo as the people who did watch the showcase.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's a travesty what they've done to my boy. But in 2009, which is closer to 15 years ago at this point, but we said 10 to 15 was the range.
Yeah, 10 to 15.
That was the year that I really discovered Halo as a player. Like, obviously I had seen it in magazines and stuff, but I didn't have a PS or an Xbox 360. I had a PS2, and I came over to my buddy's house one day and I played a little bit of Halo 3, and it just immediately I was like, I have to buy an Xbox 360 for this, because it just changed how I saw games. And I put, in that year and change span, I put hundreds of hours into 3, into ODST, into Reach, and then I stopped because they started massacring my boy, and that was a shame. And I thought it was interesting looking back at the multiplayer fandom that I guess I would say I had at the time, because a lot of us, we were in high school, so we were playing multiplayer games to socialize, and we still do that with Apex Legends, or we play car soccer sometimes, usually as a catalyst to just have conversation at this point, whereas before it was, we are hashtag gaming. And I thought it was interesting seeing that flip from that, and then obviously before that, single player games like a Ratchet and Clank or stuff like that, and looking at what I play today, which is predominantly single player experiences, like for example the one I'll say now is Yakuza. I think that this might be blasphemy for those that are fans of mine, I think that Yakuza might be my favorite series over Ratchet and Clank at this point. Like, I still have that nostalgia.
It's one of mine for sure.
Yeah, I still have that nostalgia for Ratchet, but it's the only game that I can think of that made me completely just suck into it every single time and not be able to put it down. I've had games like that before, like a New Vegas or a Fallout 3 to a lesser extent, but it reminded me the most of that feeling that those Ratchet games gave me, but as an adult, which is harder to pull off than as a kid. Mm-hmm. And that's why I evangelize Yakuza so much, is that the fact that series can do that while being up until recently entirely subtitled, a type of game that generally players here in North America wouldn't really consume, prior to Yakuza 0 and Persona both dropping in the same year. And Persona 5, that is. And I just I find it very fascinating to see how that pivot happened. That Microsoft was the king for a few years there because of their multiplayer experiences, and now in an era where more players are playing multiplayer games than ever before, it's the single player experiences that are defining both my playtime and countless others' playtimes. And it's a big point of contention if we circle that back to Halo and to Microsoft, that they've continued to struggle to deliver single player experiences, to the point that they're looking continually to buy other studios that have those. So that's my soapbox.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say, you guys had a discussion a while ago about sort of the je ne sais quoi of you had to be there type games. And I know that Halo Reach for me was one of those absolutely around that time.
Yeah.
That was sort of, it's been well documented that was sort of my first just dipping the toe in the water for video games. And it was a really, really big part of forming a lot of very valuable and close friendships for me. But man, we played Infinite and it just fell flat.
I once got banned from Halo Infinite multiplayer, not to cut you off. I once got banned because the game crashed. Oh, yeah. And yeah. I was in a match and I couldn't leave the match. I had to sit there and watch a match from the title screen or from the level loading screen, and hear audio, but not be allowed to move or spawn. And so I'd have to close the app to do anything. And I got banned for that multiple times.
Yeah. It felt like sorry, Sean, I'll let you go in 1 second. It felt like eating very flavorful food, but you have COVID and you can't taste it. That's how it felt to me. So sorry, Sean, continue.
No, just saying, I remember that instance because, we were all having trouble, getting on that night. Because I remember we just constantly kick people over and over again. And it's really disappointing to see what Halo Infinite has become. But, God, I forgot all about that night.
Yeah, it's just, it's fascinating that they were able to make a game with worse netcode than Splatoon. You couldn't party up in Splatoon up until Splatoon 3. You could not party up truly.
I don't like that you're accurate with that.
I'm still just baffled by it. And I'm still angry every time I think about it. It's one of the few times I get angry about games. And I'm not here to get angry about that today. But looking back 10 years and thinking about, how Halo 3 and Reach defined those years for me as a player or as a consumer.
Yeah.
Halo Infinite is maybe even worse because it is, I think, got a lot of the bones of Halo still there. And you can see how it could have been very good. As you play it, you go, oh man, this part is fun. I had fun here. And then it's just kind of surrounded by a lot of bad. And you really look back at Halo and you see, do you remember the Halo? I think it was 3 commercial with the miniatures and the giant field.
Yeah, that's one of the best commercials. Yeah. That won an award.
One of the best commercials ever made. And now Halo doesn't have the budget for a cutscene.
Yeah,
that's right. That's right.
They tweeted out that they had to not include a cutscene because they didn't have the budget to do it. And that is where we're at, where we had one of the most influential, coolest commercials ever made for this property. And today they are saying, look, we had to prioritize whether or not we wanted to fix bugs or create a cutscene. And I'm not saying that cutscenes are easy to make or that there's not, labor and time that goes into it, but this is a multi-trillion-dollar company. And they are not putting in enough of a budget to create a cutscene for what was at one point the flagship property for the entire brand.
For the entirety of console gaming, I'll say, for a little while.
What are they? So I guess my question is, what are they not hitting that made Microsoft or 343, whoever is determining this budget, what are they not hitting that made them take this budget and maybe make it not enough?
So I don't think they understand Halo.
So there's that.
So you think it's just poor management?
So yeah, look.
Go ahead, Sean.
Look at the difference between. I don't know if you played the single player, but like the single player, like when you're doing the story mission compared to multiplayer, is already very different. And it felt like they were trying to make Halo the esports game that's gonna take place of everything, and they focused so much on battle passes and trying to get the esports to go with it that they just kind of like lost what Halo is, which is just fun, chaotic multiplayer. So, I mean, there's a lot of strategy that goes into it and skill, but at the same time, like you can just dick around in Halo and just have fun. And it felt like they kind of took that away a little bit.
So you reminded me of something else to get angry about, but I want to go back real quick to say the cutscene that Em is referring to is the cutscene for Season 4. So a lot of multiplayer Battle Royale-esque games, every time they have a season, or games as a service, rather, not Battle Royale, they'll have a cutscene to give you the new lore for that season or whatever, to get you hooked.
Introduce new skins.
Yep, yeah. Stuff like that. And they just didn't make that this year. It's just a sizzle reel. It doesn't even need to be animated half the time.
Yeah.
So, to what Em said, they don't know what Halo is, I think. And I don't like saying that because it sounds reductive and it sounds very, these guys just can't make this game. But they could. The problem is that Halo has moved so far away from what it was that in trying to recapture that old gameplay approach, it should have come off as novel, but they kept trying to shove in modernized styles to it. It was not supposed to be a service game at first, is one thing.
Yeah.
It was supposed to be Halo 6, not Halo Forever.
Yeah.
And you can tell that when you look at the battle passes, because I don't know if you guys remember the battle passes, but...
Oh, I do.
They were, I want to say 100 levels like usual. They might have been 70. I could be wrong. So correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. If you leave a comment, thank you. Leave a nice review as well, please, for if you're on the audio realm. They really do help get this thing indexed on more platforms, so please do that. And if you have a bad review, don't. Just don't. So
5 stars like Amazon, man.
so anyway, the battle passes, however many levels they were, I want to say only 20 of those levels on the battle pass actually gave you gear, because they'd give you a left knee pad and then a right knee pad 3 levels later. And some of the level ups you'd get for the battle pass, premium or otherwise, because the cool thing that Halo Infinite did was that you could choose your battle pass from prior seasons, so they always stacked forever, and I actually really like that. Yeah. But the problem is, A, you can only compete for one at a time, so you have to switch back and forth. B, there's no benefit to playing matches well. They may have just changed that in one of the recent updates. I'm going to say I'm out of the loop, because who the hell is playing Halo Infinite anymore?
No.
But before, in the old Halo games, you would level up based on experience you would earn for getting kills, double kills, assists, specialty kills, being the MVP, anything like that. And then there were also challenges they introduced in Reach, which is the usual, Call of Duty challenge type stuff. Excuse me. The problem with Infinite is that in Halo Infinite, the only way to get experience for a long time was through those challenges. And because of that, you didn't need to play well. So I could play, we played matches, and I was already back on my Halo shit. I was getting 30 kills a match, taking MVP, carrying sometimes because Nicco was on Xbox One, so he couldn't see anything, and the other players were not really used to Halo anymore, or at all, ever. And so I would carry, and I'd get the same experience as them, because you could only get experience for getting a double kill with a grenade. That was your challenge. Yeah. That's it. But the battle pass, to circle back to that, in those battle passes, you would only get, like I said, 20 items as far as gear goes, and a bunch of them were then premium items you still had to buy. Some of them were double XP to then activate for another hour to get more battle pass levels. Some of them were level ups, like level skips, I believe was what they were. I don't know what they were called officially, but they were just ways to give you more experience in the battle pass rather than things. It wasn't like...
That's exhausting.
It's disgusting.
That's so exhausting.
It's actually disgusting, because not only was it a service game, it was a bad service game.
Yeah.
And there's no way to fix that, because the rot is at the center of the tree. Sorry, Sean, go ahead.
the thing that also bothered me, hopefully they fix this, but I remember, like, you just talked about you were able to get armor pieces and you could, like, attach that to your bodysuit and what have you. But you can only do it to specific suits. Like, pieces that you got can only work with other pieces. You couldn't, you had armor customize.
I'm reasonably okay with that because it feels like, having a variant of a skin, right? So, like, I'm reasonably okay with them saying, oh, these pieces are only available for these armor chassis. But it was just how it was presented felt bad because you would go through and, maybe you've done 10 levels and now you unlock your one piece of armor and it's for the mech you don't even have yet.
Yeah,
and that's
that happened
what
to
felt
me.
bad.
Yeah, so I ended up spending money on cat ears because I wanted to feel something.
Versus something like a Fortnite, right? Where Fortnite will give you a skin in the battle pass and then throughout the battle pass will give you variants of that skin, which feels a little bit better.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. And I also am not super keen on the right knee, right arm, left arm.
You could always, in prior Halos, you could always customize that so that you could get both at once when you leveled up, and then you would be able to equip one or the other at your choice. So I don't understand why, other than that they were starved for content because the game was delayed a year. The Xbox did not have a flagship title for a year. And besides Flight Sim, I'm sorry. And that was what they dropped, was a year late, a quarter of a game. With a campaign.
To be honest,
go ahead, sorry.
Their whole UI was just Forza anyways. It was the Forza upgrade tree.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They didn't even create any, which felt terrible. It felt terrible to experience on a PC. Yeah, if you play Forza, right, and then you play Halo Infinite and just go through the multiplayer upgrade, it's the same. Yeah. It's the same as upgrading your car, and it just feels really bad.
And the worst part to me, I think, is that, like we were saying, like if you play the campaign, you can kind of see some of the promise outside of the fact that there's no reason to play any of the side stuff in the campaign other than A, to do it, and B, to get armor for specifically the Master Chief Armor Core for multiplayer. So
armored core?
You're goddamn right.
Sorry.
God. So you could get armor cores for the Mark 7 or Mark 6. I think it's Mark 7 now. And you could get different colors for it. So the Master Chief armor had the most color variations for a significant amount of time, if not to this day, because you could get them by doing bases in the multiplayer, Far Cry style. But there's no experience in Halo's campaign because I don't know how you do experience. So it's just kind of, what if we made an open world like Halo 1 sort of promised to be, except now we actually did it, and then they realized partway through that maybe they didn't know what to do with that. So you had a campaign with a really sick-ass grappling hook, some super Halo-y physics. That was good. Yeah, super Halo-y physics where you jump and you go 30 feet in the air and it's amazing. Then you get to the multiplayer where the sliders are turned down to 10%, or maybe it was 25%. So the grenades don't send vehicles flying anymore because the physics are all set specifically towards that. Like in other Halo games, in Reach, for example, they lowered your jumping gravity. And the excuse was, well, you're not a Spartan 2, so you can't jump as well because you didn't have so many steroids injected into you. And that was like, okay, that works. It's whatever. It's lore. They always had lore to the multiplayer. It's cool. In this one, they don't really ever care to explain it. It's just that you jump lower now, and everything flies worse and explodes worse. And so it makes Griffball can't exist in modern Halo Infinite. And
that's what I was talking about earlier. Like, it just kind of ruins the experience because it doesn't feel like Halo, but I can play the single player and have an actual somewhat Halo experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just it's just so absurdly frustrating. And I didn't want to stick on this for too long, but whenever we mention Halo Infinite, we just all get mad because how?
Yeah, no.
How do you do this? How do you go through 12 directors?
Well, it seems like their tastes had changed over time. For the worse.
Yeah.
Much like Sean's tastes have changed over time.
God.
Sean.
Good say.
Sean, right. What'd you bring in for us today?
So I have actually two experiences. So way back when I was younger, I used to play a lot of games on the Super Nintendo, and some of my favorite games ended up being JRPGs, like turn-based JRPGs, like Final Fantasy VI. Love that game. Chrono Trigger is one of my favorite games of all time. Super Mario RPG. I'm so glad that's back. And so I played a lot of those JRPGs. And then when the next generation came on the PlayStation, I started to drive a little bit away from that. I started to focus more on, I played Xenogears, I played Digimon World and whatnot. But then I started to go into like a different sphere of games. And I pretty much, like, from the PS2 onward, I didn't play like any turn-based games. Like, any whatsoever. I've missed out on so many Final Fantasy series games. Never played a Dragon Quest until, like, maybe 2 years ago. So for the longest time, I just stayed away from that stuff. And I had, like, a lot of different tastes. We talked about first-person shooters. That was really big back in the day. And I focused a lot of time on that type of stuff. Until eventually, and I used to be really big into that. It was 3D platformers and shooters. That's all that mattered to me. Like Black on the PlayStation 2 is such a good game. I highly recommend. But anyway, so over time, I kept hearing about this series. We talked about it a little bit before. I heard about Persona, and Persona 5 was coming out. And I was like, should I, shouldn't I, should I, shouldn't I? I don't like turn-based RPGs. And I gave it a shot. And Persona 5 ended up being one of my favorite games of all time. And also because of that, I would always like play, its soundtrack in the background and whatnot. And it's very jazzy. I studied jazz for a little bit in college. It's not really something I'm super into. Well, was super into, I should say. But Persona 5 actually kind of like brought that back for me. And because of that, I started looking into some more musicians, some more songs, and even learning some more drum beats when it comes to jazz, because I really like metal music. That's always been my biggest thing. Like, I'll go into a gym and just lift to like Ghost Inside and what have you. But hearing... Like 10, 15 years ago, you would not have gotten me to listen to any kind of jazz, anything. Like I said, I studied jazz because it was like, okay, I could study jazz or I could study agriculture. I like music. And since then, since Persona 5, I've become a lot more intrigued by jazz. Like, there's a couple songs I could even like recommend. I wrote them down. One of my favorite ones right now is In These Times by Micaiah McCraven. Highly recommend. But like, it's really interesting because how many fundamentals are in jazz that also are within metal. And I never would have thought that until like I started to listen to it more and started to like break it down. Because you could have like Meshuggah drum beats go... Yeah. It's really interesting to hear like jazz and then go to like Meshuggah and see the correlation, because you don't expect that, but like it's definitely there whenever you like really listen to the beat.
Yeah. And it's the touch too. There's a bit of the touch in there. Just like feel on your instrument. You know what I mean? Where people give metal musicians shit for just playing at like max volume all the time, but they're absolutely not. Like, that's post-processing generally. Like, people...
Oh, yeah.
If you think that the drummer from Meshuggah can hit the with his feet at max volume all the time, then you don't have an understanding of physics, right? And a lot of that comes from like feathering the kick drum and your fundamentals of drum techniques that you learn from jazz. And so it's really interesting for me to hear you have video games be such a positive influence on like your music taste, and thus your evolution, as like a person.
The thing for me is, and now, like I said, I've played Persona 5. Now I'm playing Persona 4 Golden, and I gave Dragon Quest a chance, and I'm going into
which Dragon Quest did you give a chance?
Yakuza eventually. But
sorry, what, Kevin?
Which Dragon Quest did you give a chance to?
The newest one. 11? 11?
Okay, good. Yeah. 11 is a really good starting point. As someone who started with... I technically started with 1 and 3, but 11 is really, really... I mean, and I'll say this. Dragon Quest and Yakuza, since you mentioned both together, both excel at virtual tourism.
Yeah, which I really like.
Yeah, the entirety of the Dragon Quest series is based around the idea of every town being genuinely unique rather than just a bunch of NPCs. So they might have a unique dialect or a unique set of mannerisms or a gimmick to the town. Almost akin to how like Pokemon has a lot of towns that are just wildly different from one another. Except here, there are actually citizens in it, instead of like 4 people. And it's fascinating to see the two scopes there of virtual tourism in the grand scope of visiting an entire country or an entire continent versus in Yakuza where it's incredibly niched down into most of those games take place on 7 square blocks, and yet they find new ways to integrate new stuff to each and every one of them. Just two sides of the same coin, and it's a coin that doesn't really enter circulation all that often. So sorry, continue.
So if either of you had heard the term virtual tourism 10 years ago, would you have been intrigued with it the way you are today?
No. I would have thought that it was like metaverse where you just sit in and you're like in an airplane. It's like, all right, look, there's Canada down there. You want to stop there? Click the button. All right, now you're in Canada. Look to the left, look to the right. All right, next spot.
It would depend on how it's described to me, because I consider like Majora's Mask a bit of virtual tourism. Because
absolutely.
You get to visit the different sub-communities, and you get to visit people at every hour of the day and follow their schedule. And, I mean, I don't have to explain Majora's Mask to anybody. Yeah. We all know.
Yeah.
But...
Yeah. Top 3 Zelda game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But virtual tourism is a bit of a nouveau term that I don't think would have hit the same 10 years ago that it does now.
Yeah. Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, no. But, like I said, over time, like, it's been interesting because, like, trying new things has allowed me expand upon things that I already like. We just talked about, turn-based RPGs, jazz music and what have you, and how it correlates to like metal. It's just really interesting that like sometimes just taking a step out of your comfort zone can open up a whole new world that you're not expecting to actually resonate with you and even push you in other things that you enjoy.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And in those worlds, I'm sure that bullying occurs, and one Mr. Moriarty has asked us to bully him more.
It's true.
So MX bunch of letters. Can you please? What would you bring in? What'd you bring in as one of your examples right now?
Oh, I see. So actually, I have 5 things here. I have 5 things here, right? And they are all hot takes, I think. But.
Yeah, we can go around the circle again too. Like it doesn't.
We're gonna hot take this. All right. So I'm gonna throw out first of all Iron Man in the MCU, right? Which I think was originally for me, because this is 2008 or whatever.
Yeah.
Groundbreaking. The concept of the MCU, the shared universe, right? And yet today, I think we can all agree, formulaic. It has directly led to this saturation of superhero movies, where
not just of superhero movies, of multiverses,
just the whole thing, right? So if you were to go back 15 years ago, you would land at the first Iron Man coming out, and you'd be like, wow, the Iron Man, what a cool movie. And then we look forward to today, where you just put the word Marvel on it, and I get that instant Ubisoft fatigue, where it's like, I don't even care. I don't want to watch it. I have no interest in it. I don't want to see something called Marvel anymore at all. Not
until they do the Marvel Blumhouse collab. That's
right. Like, start killing off Supermans. I'm fine with that. I don't want it. I don't want to see it. I want them to take a break. I am perfectly fine every time I started to feel schadenfreude when I hear things like, oh, Ant-Man was a failure. It's like, good. Mm-hmm. Stop watching it. Watching it, and it would be different if this was all high quality stuff, but it's goddamn not. These movies are bad.
Nowadays, people have gotten used to the look of money. Do you agree?
I mean, yeah.
The one that gets me, that this is where I really left the MCU pretty close to fully, actually. It was WandaVision. Because it was during COVID era, we're all at home, they put out this show, and the first 3 episodes are magnificent. Like, they are just stellar combination of satire and genuinely inspired by different eras of television and moving through those eras of television. And I loved the idea of seeing the perspective and the aspect ratio change as you got to different parts of the episodes, or the episode 1 is in color or in black and white, episode 2 is in color. Mm-hmm. And then they move into 16:9 or 21:9 actually, I guess. And it becomes a regular Marvel thing. And I just glazed over, and I got so disappointed because I was like, man,
it promises something that it doesn't deliver on.
Loki was the same way. Falcon and the Winter Soldier was mid, from front to back.
Since we started talking about like the mismanagement of these properties by the businesses, there is a point to be made about how they're moving too fast, and especially like WandaVision is where I think that started. That they're moving too fast to keep track of the changes that the other movies are making, and so I don't
think it matters. You say mismanagement, but they've made more money off of these than anything else.
I don't think I'd agree with mismanagement. I think it's just that it's managed not for us.
Yeah, it's meant to appeal to a very certain kind of person, and I just don't I don't like it anymore.
Okay.
I'm going to immediately jump off into Avatar after that, because I watched Avatar 2 last night, and it feels like pretty perfect to correlate, this 10-year journey that we saw between Avatar and Avatar 2, where it didn't change. The movie, I did not enjoy Avatar 2 at all. I thought it was a very, very bad movie. I think it is actively unenjoyable outside of the slice of life anime moments that are ironically detracting directly from the plot. If they turned that into a film where it was Discovery Planet Earth Avatar, right? Like, that's a great film where you get to see these fish water people, doing whatever. The graphics were, absolutely mind-blowing, but the story was terrible. And it actively ruined the entire Avatar thing for me. And I started thinking, because, we're going to do this podcast, and I was like, wow, that's been, 10 years since the original Avatar. And I think that Avatar 2 is so bad that it actively made me dislike the original Avatar. And I think this kind of is the big overarching storyline of my character, right, change over 10 years, is I've become a lot more critical. A lot more critical when it comes to entertainment and media, when it comes to video games, when it comes to movies, when it comes to music. I am being much more critical when I approach it. I'm being much more critical when I watch it. I'm not sort of consuming as blindly as I was. And Avatar is really kind of like my poster child for that. I think that was a really unenjoyable experience. Now, I have Skyrim. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, because you said that, and Skyrim also ties into this, how much do you feel that your job in content creation has helped inspire or inform that change in analysis?
Oh, definitely, right? Like, once you start playing a video game and you start kind of getting into the habit of being like, okay, but I need to look at this. What do I really think? How do I, diagnose my feelings at the time? And you start to kind of do that self-inventorying as you're doing these things. I believe it becomes habitual, and once it becomes habitual, it's there forever, right? Like, that's a habit you're not going to break.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I don't know that I enjoy games and movies as basic as I used to, right? Like, I used to just kind of sit there and be like, oh, you just turn your brain off. And now I hear, just turn your brain off. And I'm like, God damn it. I shouldn't have to do that.
Ha! Dude, well, actually, I think this is something we can all weigh in on, because my journey in that regard, right, of like in terms of how I consume the media, I am nowadays less critical, but more staunch in my opinions, if that makes sense. So, back in the day, I wasn't shy about my opinions back then either, to be clear. But, I spent so much time liking Harry Potter as a kid, but then I thought about it and I didn't like Harry Potter, and now I'm indifferent about it because I don't know where I actually stand, and I'm staunchly indifferent about it, right? But when I think about like things that I don't like, right? It tend to be like musicals and Disney. Sorry, Sean. Disney stuff.
I thought you were going to say musicals, Disney, and Sean.
And Sean. Yeah, no. Yeah, I knew you 10 years ago for sure.
Yeah, it was awful.
No, but yeah. So, they tend to be like that brand of cringe, right? I've said before that certain brands of cringe align with my vibe and certain brands of cringe don't. And these happen to be ones that don't. And I'm very, very, very secure in that opinion. And it's not changing anytime soon, right? But I'm less critical of things. Like if I hear good stuff, I'm like, oh, that's good, right? I'll be like, that's good quality. I can see where the art was put into this, but god damn, I don't like it.
Yeah, I know.
Kevin and Sean, do you guys have...
I know from my perspective, I think that taking on that critical lens of things more actually, in a weird way, contrary to what you guys were both kind of saying, I think
I didn't get to say what I was saying.
That's fair.
I actually believe that
first, yeah.
Like the things I like more, the things I like more, and the things I dislike more. It's just that I'm not as easily, I guess, impressed. Right? I'm not as easy to please. When something is mid, I'm very anti again. I find what I do and don't like about these things. So when I do like it, I feel that I enjoy it more because I have a way of saying what I like and what I didn't like.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I meant more in the sense of like we were talking about, having that critical lens can make you enjoy things less, or it makes it more of a what's the word here? The discourse gets polarized, because either way you're either leaning one way or the other more heavily. I think that generally speaking, in part thanks to content and in part thanks to one particular film class I took, which was just about formally analyzing different movies or TV or any sort of cinema, that I just took for an extra credit. I think I mentioned it once before in the podcast. I think that made me appreciate those things more. Like, I was never a huge movie guy, and mainly because I was one of those weird ones where I'm like, well, you can only do so much in 3 hours. So yes, it's impressive if you can tell a good story in, now it's 3 hours thanks to Marvel. But before that, it was, an hour and a half, 2 hours. And I was like, well, I could just watch a show that has, 12 hours per season, and it runs longer, and you don't have to wait as long, and you get more out of it. Or, in the case of video games, it's like, oh, here's 70 hours of game, and you just get it all at once, except for Halo Infinite, where you get nothing. And I think because of like that class in particular, I started analyzing things more based on the behind the lens perspective, if that makes sense. And that made me kind of appreciate a lot of them a lot more than I think I did prior, which is an interesting thing because, we've all gotten dinged for, oh, why are you so negative? And it's like, I'm critical, I'm not negative, Mm-hmm. And meanwhile, I'm like, I think I'm more positive than I used to be. It's just that if I don't like something, I'm like, well, people want me to talk about that. I'm expected to have an opinion now. And that's fine, I'm not afraid to not have an opinion. But the trade-off of the job essentially is that I think it made me sound more negative when I feel more positive, which is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Sean, what about you?
Well, for me, the way that I am and have always been is I've always looked at things critically, but at the same time, I am able to just be like, yeah, it's a game, and I'm just going to shut my brain off and do things. However, I do also hyperfixate on certain things. So I'll try to look into the themes, look into the psychology and stuff like that. And then I will hyperfixate, like, what is this person? What does this mean? And go into, what kind of story did they want to tell with the gameplay? Because it's really interesting to me when it comes to, like, say, video games, to look at how the gameplay can also tell a story and how they were able to implement that, and to see if there's any kind of connection or disconnect there. But for me, it's just kind of always been the same. Like, I just like things, and if I'm super into it, I'll dive into the lore, I'll dive into the writing, go behind the scenes. I don't know, there are some games I'm very critical on, but overall, I think I'm just overly positive about 98% of everything. 1% is Glover, and the other percent is myself. But
It's valid.
Glover.
yeah, I like that Glover's the one that made you laugh, not me. But
99% hot gas.
yeah, but I still get hate mail for that. But for me, whenever I started to like look into things more critically, it just like helped me get my voice out there, if that makes any sense. Like, I was more like, yeah, this is how I feel, and I put it into words. My thing, though, how I create stuff is most of it is very improv. Like, I write down like my one thought, and then I'll just go off of that, and that's what I record. So I think just, I don't know, it's an interesting time for me, honestly. I don't know. I like to yell happy things, but then also yell angry things, and that is just me.
That's valid.
You are a sports fan. You were
I am a
talking
sports
about
fan.
That's true.
You were
We're not
talking
gonna
about
talk about
Skyrim a bit ago. Before I cut
Yes.
you off there, so jump back to Skyrim because I want to hear that.
I don't have any big thing to talk about Skyrim. It's just a good example of like the type of thing that I've become, and I think it fits into that criticalness, right? It was something that I praised when it came out. It was this, huge, expansive player freedom kind of experience, and then you look at it over time, and now I can put in what I don't like about it, and I think I wouldn't say that it harms it, but it definitely makes it so that I don't want to play Skyrim again. It is repetitive. It's got a lack of depth, and quite frankly, compared to any of the open world games that came out afterwards, it's really hard to say that you should go play Skyrim.
Well, I'll give it credit that it's better than Fallout 4. But yeah.
LOL.
Yeah, but you know what I mean. Like,
No,
even
I know.
then,
I'm just being
Skyrim and Fallout are the same game.
Yeah.
It's just, Skyrim is not something that I think I can recommend. And I don't think that we will look at it as a fond game over time. I think it will die out, right? Like, it's not a good game to play today. Comparatively, it was very much of its time. And as time continues, I think it'll leave Skyrim in the dust.
I don't know, because I mean, I still play it. I know many people that still play Skyrim. The thing with Skyrim to me is that it is very repetitive, and like, you can do a lot of the same things, like the whole, stealth archer build that a lot of people do. But there's still so many weird things that you can do within that world that kind of makes every playthrough a little different, because you're like, oh, I'll do this instead and this instead. And I think with Skyrim, it's more about we talked about this earlier, is the visual tourism. And that's kind of what Skyrim is when you think about it, because the story itself isn't that much, but it's the journey that you're taking, the random people you run into, the bandits, all the crazy stuff that happens. It's really just you going and doing rather than the story pushing you. Because I think Skyrim's story is very bare bones. It's just left a lot to be desired, but like, I think what a lot of people hold on to, including myself, I am guilty of this, is that nostalgic feeling. Like, the first time you booted up that game, you just went for it. You remember all the weird, chaotic stuff that happened, because, like, again, it's a Bethesda game. Things break. But it's so interesting to me because, like, while it's repetitive, everyone's journey is different, and is it the best game ever? No, but I do think a lot of people look back on it fondly because of the memories they made. But I mean, I totally get where you're coming from, because like, there are games that have come out that like give that open world experience a much better feel, a much better story. But for me, it's just, again, it's that visual tourism that we talked about. I just loved exploring Skyrim. I mean, I just played it literally last night because I was trying to wake up.
Yeah. All right.
I guess then the next one that I have,
Fallout
this
76.
This is a fun one for me. Is Far Cry 3, and I think this is an interesting piece of media because I have both learned to appreciate and not appreciate it in different ways as time has gone by. When Far Cry 3 came out, it was just kind of like, oh wow, look at this interesting thing. It was a fun time to play a game and shoot some badgers and whatever. But now, as time's gone by, right? I view it very differently. I find that the story of Far Cry 3 is really compelling to me. I like the story of this sort of descent into madness and the inability of Brody to be able to handle the murders and trauma that he's experiencing.
Brody.
It's accurate to real life, yeah.
Yeah, it's very accurate. I think that's really, really interesting, but then I also can say in the exact same story how it fails very badly to fall into that sort of white savior trope. And when looking at the gameplay, saying, oh, it was, super unique and compelling, and then you look at it today, and boy, it's just Far Cry Ubisoft fatigue thing.
Yeah.
I don't think I could play Far Cry 3 again, even though I think it's really, really fascinating. And it's one of those where I didn't appreciate the story at the time, and today I really appreciate the story, and I really love the gameplay, and today I hate it.
Yeah.
Did you play the DLC?
I played the shit out of that game.
Valid.
I think you mentioning that, I didn't even think about the Assassin's Creed games because they're just nothing to me anymore. Like, I just actively don't think about most of Ubisoft's output. And, in the same era that we're talking about, I played the hell out of Assassin's Creed 1 into 2 immediately, so more so 2, and Brotherhood. And then, I've said it before on the podcast, as soon as they announced Revelations, I was done because I was like, I know where this is going now. And I just haven't thought about Ubisoft pretty much at all since, outside of the references to Ubisoft Towers, Yep.
Mm-hmm. Climb the tower, see the map.
Yeah.
And even that is in Far Cry 3 and every Assassin after that and every Far Cry after that. And it's a thing
every
where
Ubisoft
I
game.
think every Ubisoft game. It's even in The Division in some ways where you have to go into the safe houses to unlock the things around it.
Now,
and it's just
sorry,
thing where, well, no, I'm just kind of summarizing where, Far Cry is sort of all the worst and the best of Ubisoft to me.
I was going to say, I know you have one more, but this posits an interesting question as well, which is, do you feel, and this is for a roundtable for all of us here, and this actually is for those that are listening in the live stream chat as well. Let us know in the chat because I'm curious what you folks will say. Do you feel that 10 years older version of you today has better taste or is more rounded or less rounded than your past self with regards to looking at what you've played or what you've consumed 10 years ago versus today?
I think it's one of those things where, like, as you become more critical, since I mentioned that, right, becoming more critical, by definition, you become more discerning. So I think that if I were to say, what is my taste versus a 10-year ago me, it is certainly more discerning. I would say that the tastes I have are more refined.
Yeah, and I think I'm kind of I have worse taste, but I have a wider breadth of what I enjoy, if that makes sense. Because my journey, which we'll get to eventually, has just been one of opening my mind. And by virtue of that, I've experienced a lot more things, and I like a lot more things, but my taste is worse for reasons I'll get into later.
Sean?
Okay. Mine has just kind of been the same. Like I said, I just try things that I used to like and then find a connection to what I currently like. It's just, I just try to keep an open mind and doing new things.
I think for me, it's sort of in line with what Em said, where I think by being more discerning, I do have that wider palette of things. But also that comes with, in my personal case, I grew up really friggin' poor. I didn't have many things to consume. There was a while where we didn't have cable at the house or internet at the house for a little bit because that was just a bill we couldn't really afford. So a lot of my middle school, like one of my years in middle school, the main thing I had was playing fucking Madden 06, SmackDown versus Raw, one of the WWE games. I don't remember which one. And I had like 3 Family Guy DVDs. and that was pretty much it. That was my media for like I came back to having cable, and reality TV had blown up, and I was like, what the hell is this? Like, when did we leave scripted television, and when did all this stuff change, and why is Cartoon Network not cartoons anymore? And I think because of having, for those that are watching the video version of this podcast, all of that behind me, most of which I bought when I was no longer poor, but probably shouldn't have bought, so I just have a lot of shit that I gotta probably sell. But
he's pointing to the game shelf for the audio listeners.
Yes. Having all of those games and having all of those, Blu-rays or having access to things like Netflix, which really weren't a thing 10 years ago if you go all the way back. We're talking 2012 was the first season of House of Cards, I think. And Orange is the New Black. Was it 2012 or was it 2013?
I think 2013.
So 10 years ago, before 10 years ago, we didn't have streaming as we know it. It was a thing, but it was because of those two shows that the entire media landscape we're in now is this gold mine of stuff that you better watch before it gets delisted, but it's a gold mine of stuff that's more accessible than ever.
Yeah, did you see that there was a Grease show that came out literally this past week, and they took it off?
It was Paramount, right? Yeah.
Yeah, Paramount Plus took it out after 2 days.
There's a Frogger show we found out yesterday. Peacock has a Frogger TV show. So to answer the question that I asked, my taste is worse because I want to watch that Frogger show.
We do watch a lot more things ironically nowadays too, though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because I know I've watched several things ironically that I now just enjoy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To circle back to the point there is that I think having that wider palette of things, it's no different than if you're a kid and you start eating fish for the first time and you're like, oh, okay, I don't like this too much. And then 7 years later, you're like, oh, my taste buds have rolled over, for lack of a better term. You have to continually trying new things. And I think because of that and because of having a buffet that I could now consume, I'm definitely better off for... If my current self is better off than 10-year prior me.
Sure.
You had one more, I believe, right?
Yeah, but to follow on with that,
Sure.
The same sort of thing. There is such a huge and deep ocean of content out there that I feel with my more critical eye towards these things, I'm also able to find and filter things so that when I do like something, I feel that I'm investing my time in it more because there's more of that. Whereas if I don't like something, I'm less willing to watch a bad show. I'm less willing to continue a bad movie. I'm less willing to listen to music that I'm not enjoying immediately because I know there's so much more out there.
Yeah. And so, even in the modern internet era, the hooks that we need to have, both in terms of our content here and in the general landscape. I mean, songs have gotten shorter. Songs have gotten a minute shorter on average because of that ocean, like you said, of content that's instantly available for free. So you need to make your songs 2 minutes so you get those streams in. So you get people hooked. You just have the hook and the refrain and you're done.
But,
go ahead.
And speaking of songs, you can find the Crub. It's been a minute, so we got to do this obligatory. Okay, I'm gonna make all of our listeners a deal that you can find us at the Crubcast on anywhere that you find podcasts and some places that you find music. Because you were just talking about songs.
Go to crub.org and you'll have access.
Wait, do we have that?
Yeah, we've had crub.org.
Yeah. Oh, boy.
Yeah. Go to crub.org. Wow. It'll redirect you right to where you can find every single podcast. For those of you that are watching when this goes live on Friday. By then it will be up. Currently, for those that are watching live, I will do that when the stream is over. But it'll be there.
Yeah.
It will be done.
And you can find the Crubcast anywhere you get your podcasts. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Most importantly, please share and also leave a good review. Only leave a review if it's a good one. I
don't think the share bit works unless Chris puts up a picture of Cher for the video listeners now.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
He will.
He better.
Well, no, but we need people to get the word out, right? These are words that are important. This is an important exercise for everybody to go through. I swear. Yeah. Assess your change over 10 years. Sorry, Sean, what'd you say? Like I said,
if we get 1,000 followers, By the end of July, I
Where?
will pierce my nipples.
Where? Not your nipples, the followers.
Oh, that, ooh, that's a good question.
Everywhere.
Yes.
So on any one platform or cumulatively?
Let's do YouTube.
So subscribers.
That'll be pretty soon.
Yeah, that's gonna happen. Yeah.
You just gave me another video to make.
Sean just wants an. It sounds like you just want a nipple piercing.
If this podcast has one listener, I'll get my nipples pierced, and I'm just like listening to it like 20 minutes later.
Yeah. But yeah, so you can find us at Crub Official everywhere except Twitch, which is at Crub_official. That will be moot soon. We are planning a move to YouTube eventually.
Yeah.
So keep an eye out for that.
Thanks, Twitch.
Yeah. And make sure to tune in for the exclusive pre and post shows. Anyway, I'm gonna do mine now.
No, I haven't given to my face. Okay, so the one that I think that we'll all agree on, right?
Okay.
That the perception of this has changed so drastically over 10 years.
Say Game of Thrones.
This is one of those things where, again, I think this is maybe a bit of a hot take, but everyone maybe will agree, is GTA 5, right?
Yep.
Which, when it came out, hugely great game, engaging story, all the characters in this huge open world. But have we seen any GTA 5 DLC, any single player expansions? Have we seen anything that wasn't GTA Online? Have we seen? It's been 10 years. It's 10 years now.
And also, GTA was like the coolest thing when it came out. Like everybody was playing it and like talking about it. And now it's like, numerically speaking, yeah, I guess, quote unquote, everybody plays it, but it's not in the zeitgeist the way that it was. It's in the zeitgeist now as like, oh yeah, I play GTA. Oh, cool, whatever, you know?
Yeah, no, I'll give you that. I'll agree with that. Because I was going to say, it's the most viewed game on YouTube aside from Minecraft every year.
It's like the most profitable game of all time. It's made like $8 billion. To put that into comparison, right? Both avatars combined have made half of what GTA 5 has made. But it's been 10 years. It's going to be 10 years in September. That is the 10-year anniversary of GTA 5.
Another re-release, baby.
God,
that's insane. Yeah, they're gonna, with HD textures.
It's gonna happen. No, yeah, with more HD textures.
With quote unquote HD textures.
It's gonna be worse textures. Actually,
sorry.
They're gonna market it as being play it like it originally was.
Sorry, Sean, you were saying something?
No, I need to now see if GTA 5 has more current players than Halo Infinite.
It does.
Oh yeah, it almost certainly does.
It has more
concurrent
concurrent players.
Like
it has more concurrent viewers on Twitch right now than Halo has players in the last month.
Yeah.
Like it's not
that's what I was
it's not close.
That's what I was getting at with like it being numerically a huge part of the zeitgeist, but just culturally, has it really had that much of an impact? Monetarily,
especially not anymore. Yeah. Sorry, not to jump on you again, but
no, you're right though.
GTA used to be like the peak of controversy, and they forced that torture scene in a GTA 5 to try and get controversy, and no one really cared anymore because that Overton window has moved so far that like no one cares. Like before, every GTA game was aiming for controversy, and that was what it was known for. It was the bad boy, and now it's just the most commercialized thing that you can fucking imagine besides Marvel.
Dude, it's what people perceive Axl Rose to be, right?
What?
Of course, I'm going to argue that Axl Rose is still an absolute rock star, right? But there are people who are not really into the scene who see him as like a washed up guy who like lost the magic, right? I disagree with that. And I think any Guns N' Roses fan will disagree with that because Axl Rose is still great. But like GTA is just washed up, right? It's like Crush 40. It's like Crush 40. Like it just wants so badly to be something it's not, or something it used to be rather. Yeah.
Where did this go? Like what you went from Axl Rose to GTA 5.
Well, because I couldn't think of anybody I couldn't think of anybody actually washed up. But like, because Axl Rose is not actually washed up. Like he's still got it.
I mean, you could have said Maroon 5.
Like Sebastian Bach. No, because Maroon 5 is not like rock stars. Like they've always been pop guys.
Yeah,
like I'm thinking like rock stars. Like I'm thinking like Sebastian Bach, Your who else is like a metal saint? Like who's washed up? Like Brett Michaels,
Brett Michaels.
You know, Kevin said GTA was the bad boy, and now it's not the bad boy anymore.
Oh, is that what you did the whole Axl Rose thing? Okay,
that's what I'm getting at. It's washed up. It just doesn't have the bite that it used to.
Keep digging.
The bite of '87.
The bite of '87. Yeah.
What's your? Anyway. What are your things?
Yeah, go. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Wow, we've been talking about video games for a long time. Yeah, you guys know I always come in with the wild card. And I'm just gonna start talking about. In 2012, I was watching The Office. In 2012, I was watching The Office. Now, I understand. Oh, the trapped guy. That's a good one. That's a good guy who was washed up. Sorry, go back to that. But going forward, in 2012, 2013, when I was watching The Office all the way through, right? I think it had ended at that point already, or if it hadn't, it was close to it.
It was well over by then. Because Parks and Rec only ended a year later.
Right, I thought so.
Yeah.
And so, around this time, I loved The Office. I watched it. I loved it, right? I watched it. I was like, this is a great show. Good characters, good writing, funny, haha. And now, 10 years after having watched it, looking back on it, the state of television was so much better outside of it. And I'm not sure if the people who really love it just haven't watched anything else. Because they can't. Like, there's no way, right? Parks and Rec is just so much better for the similar format, and obviously very, very different humor, but much funnier. You connect with the characters better. They didn't try to take... what I didn't realize at the time is that The Office tried to take background, like extras, like non-TV trained people, or at least not as much, and put them into the limelight, right? And give them these characters and make them kind of run with it, right? But Parks and Rec brought in professionals from day one, and I really liked that, and I really respected that, and I connected with those characters just a lot more. And I don't think I realized that for several years after watching The Office, because I did defend it like pretty staunchly for quite a while until I saw the rabid way people were consuming it and not consuming anything else. And as we know from me bringing this topic to the table, I believe very much in personal growth and personal change. And I think that watching the same show over and over and over and over again, right in the same period of time, maybe shows a lack of willingness, or rather a trepidation to change. And I just know too many people who have not given other shows a chance because of The Office. Discuss.
Yeah, I never cared about The Office, and I still don't.
Incredible.
I get annoyed when I think about The Office solely because people play it up as a bigger show than it was when it aired. It only exists because of two things. One, it was the Christmas episode was put on every iPod during Christmas 2004, I believe was the year. And two, streaming. If not for those two things, that show would be canceled after one season. And I get annoyed because that became NBC's golden child, despite not actually performing all that well in the ratings if you compare it to other shows of the same era, like a Scrubs, for example, a show that's been more or less forgotten by the general zeitgeist, despite having it better than The Office.
That's another one for me. My tastes have not changed with Scrubs. I watched it shortly after watching The Office, and that is my favorite show.
Scrubs is super enjoyable.
Hands down.
Yeah. And that's one where that was the chosen show after Friends. That was the one that was going to succeed Friends, to the point that there are jokes in the show about referencing Friends vaguely.
Yeah.
And solely because of the iPod stuff with The Office, that became the new golden child. But if you look at their ratings, it wasn't really that much of a difference between them. And I think up until season 6, Scrubs still had the lead by a significant amount over The Office. And so this is purely vendetta. I'm not going to lie to you, but it bothers me because I think that the show that maybe should have been more forgotten, not necessarily forgotten entirely, but the show that could have faded more got bumped up to like a MASH level of permanence in the television zeitgeist, when the show that was the MASH successor in Scrubs has just mostly been relegated to T-Mobile ads.
Yeah. And look, right? The Office was good. It was pulpy. It's fun. It's a good watch. You know, if you want to invest 9
seasons.
9 seasons worth of watching a show where the characters who are not Steve Carell get good for the last 2 seasons. And that's it.
Yeah.
And I think that was the other thing too that pissed me off, is that people, like, obviously Michael Scott, I think, is a good character, right? A compelling character, a character that's fun to watch and funny, right? But they didn't flesh out the other characters enough for my taste. Again, virtual tourism, right? This is virtual tourism in a show. It's slice of life. They're in an office.
I love visiting
right?
cubicles. That's what I do in my spare time.
It helps you get a flavor for the landscape, okay? But so Steve Carell, they highlighted him so much, him and Jim sometimes, right? But even then, seasons 8 and 9, like the last seasons, because Michael Scott left season 7, right after he left, they really fleshed out Jim and Pam's relationship. They gave them some human bits to chew on, and they brought the other characters into the fold, because now, after 7 years, they have finally been trained for TV. And they finally have gotten good at it, right? Whereas Parks and Rec didn't need that,
Parks and Rec outside of one season being The Office, it just immediately, as soon as you hit season 2, it's off and running.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm not gonna sit here and say that first season was very good. It was mid or below, but the rest of the seasons were just good fun and good writing,
continually better,
compelling.
Yeah,
in many different ways. And Scrubs the same way. Scrubs is a compelling start to finish. Obviously, the very, very beginning, a little bit rocky, but every sitcom is. You got to find your voice, right?
Honestly, I would disagree with you. I think that the pilot it's a pilot, so there's some characterizations that are a little bit different, some character traits that are a little bit different.
It's the Elliot characterization that I'm thinking of specifically.
That one episode. But after that, once they got greenlit, they give you everything that Scrubs is going to be in the first 4 episodes. And you know from episode 4 onward that you're like, this show is to be taken not just as a comedy, like it's going to go places. And, but
and it's here to make you feel.
Yeah.
Aside from that pilot episode. Right, exactly.
The pilot's still good. It's mostly JD.
Yeah, and also like I'm viewing it we are viewing it through the lens of the burden of knowledge, where we know these characters very well. Going back and watching them meet each other for the first time is going to have a bit of that cringiness to it that you don't get upon a first watch through. Yeah.
Well, even then, if you look at Dr. Cox from the first episode onward, he is just immediately, he knew exactly what his character, like he's leagues ahead of everyone else.
Absolutely.
And that's the point, because they cast...
And Carla too.
And they cast Zach Braff specifically because, in the same way as The Office, they wanted someone who was going to struggle in the role, because that's how the character is going to show in the show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They wanted someone who's not necessarily a trained, super good actor. It's just some kid who will probably drown in this show, and it's sink or swim, and figure it out, just like the show's main theme.
Yep.
Anyway, you had others beyond that, right? Sorry.
What? I have one other thing I do want to get to, but just to like kind of round this out, right? As far as just like growing and maturing and changing as a person, right? I watch these shows with a critical lens, absolutely, pretty much from start to finish, right? But I watch them with a critical lens from more of like a macro level, whereas nowadays I'm kind of more interested in that nitty gritty character work, and why are these characters doing these things, and how can that help us understand sort of human nature as a whole? Because does art imitate life, or does life imitate art? It's a very big question with things like this that kind of reflect the state of the world at that time, but also reflect the state of emotions continuously and in perpetuity. And these are just questions that I think about nowadays when I watch these shows that are really interesting to me that I don't have the answers to. But I never asked these types of questions back then because I've changed as a person and I've grown and developed, as we all have, right?
Mm-hmm.
So another thing for me, what?
I was gonna say, well, kinda.
If you haven't, you should. You should consider it. It's great.
Nah, not worth it. Too much work.
L take. So the other thing that I brought in is music. Just music. Yeah, it's my music taste, right? Like I was thinking back to like what I listened to in 2012, and as you guys on the pod already know, but as our audience might not know, I was pretty much around and like on the scene for like the inception of like Dat Piff style rap, that kind of rap, right? Internet rapping, but like just after the Kid Cudi phase, right? So, it was something that I had legitimately thought of. Just like, again, I don't really want to make YouTube videos anymore, but I had thought of making a video essay on this, just painting a picture of the times, because the state of music and the state of hip hop was so interesting back then, just as it is now with the O Block stuff, except the O Block stuff is much more serious, I think, and much more just real, and people are actually seeing a lot of dire consequences from it. But back then it was just the internet. It was the internet's not real life, and Soulja Boy can release as many songs as he wants to, and Lil B is doing a satire on rappers and saying anyone can be a rapper and stay humble, right? Nowadays, I still like that really shitty sound of music where it clearly was made by a person and not a team. When you see everybody coming out of Detroit right now, right? You got your Babytrons and your other, like, your TJX6s, right? Your Detroit guys who have teams behind them now, yes, but they are doing their own thing, and I love it. And that is what I loved about the early internet, Dat Piff era, right? But moving away from that, right? I went back and listened to some of the songs today that I listened to in 2013. And one thing that I've realized is not just myself, but I think everybody, society as a whole, has gotten used to what I call the sound of money. It is the sound of money because it's people paying experienced engineers and producers to produce and engineer their music and make it sound perfect, right? One of the things that I think people really loved about, for example, Daft Punk Random Access Memories, is that it's not a perfect record. It really isn't. It's a disco record. It's not a mathematically perfect record as the previous Daft Punk records had been computerized. The robots became human. They learned how to love. That's their whole arc. For 4 albums, they learned how to love. It's awesome, right? And people like that, and I like that. What we don't hear in music nowadays, what we do hear rather, is the same sound, the same type of mixing, and the same everything. Now, I do still love that. I think music has overall gotten better, and I think that people don't appreciate how hard it is to make a good pop song. It's a lot easier to make music people don't like, that certain people are rabid for, than it is to make mid music that everybody likes, right? It's really hard to do that. Back in 2012 and 2013, I think the rappers had the sauce. I think you had your Futures, and you had your, at the time, Kanye West, who I no longer support, obviously, for obvious reasons. You had your Pusha T, was like just kind of getting out of that Clips realm, and he was getting into himself, right? It was awesome, and that was the upper caliber, right? Future at the time was on Dat Piff. He was still like a SoundCloud rapper, right? But your Kanye's, your Pusha T's, your Jay-Z's, Big Sean at that time, they all had that production support that now I listen to it and anyone can make that music on a laptop and mix it to sound like it sounded in 2013. I could mix a song from 2013. If I was born 10 years earlier, I could be the most successful producer and engineer, right? Because of assuming my timeline stays the same. And, I guess that's not as much of how my tastes have changed, but more so how my perception of things have changed and how my skill has changed. But to cap this off, where my tastes have really changed is that nowadays, and this is why I say that my tastes have become worse from earlier. I'm capitalizing on this. I'm paying this off. My tastes have gotten worse because now I only listen to music that I could feasibly make.
Oh.
And I really have trouble listening to songs where people are too good at what they do, and where they've paid too much money to have it done. I still love these songs. They come on and I love them, right? I love Dua Lipa, for example, right? Amazing music. Some of the best music this side of 2020, right? But man, I don't go out of my way to listen to it, and I feel bad about that. Because I know how good it is, and I want to get there. But the thing is, I still listen to emo rap produced by just bedroom kids on a laptop, and it is what it is. But yeah, my tastes have gotten worse, but I guess I've started thinking more critically about it.
It's such a weird take to me.
I know.
To say that you won't listen to it because you can't make it yourself because it's too good. That's
I know.
Such a weird.
Well, not yet.
Weird
Not
take.
yet. Not yet, right? My tastes have still been evolving as I've been growing as a producer, and I've been listening to more and more complex and well-produced music because I know techniques now that can get me there. But it just, until I learn those techniques, it's just a weird cognitive barrier.
This thing's too good and I can't replicate it, so I'm not going to listen to it. That's why I don't sit in chairs.
It just doesn't vibe with me. It just doesn't vibe. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm excited for your Joe Pera arc where you learn to make chairs so you can sit in them.
Right?
Dude,
I
you
don't ride in cars because, what am I supposed to do? I'm not a mechanic over here. I can't make me a whole car.
You know what, though? Actually, you gave me a good seg into maybe closing out the podcast for this episode.
Yeah.
Which is that one of the things 10 years ago, and I don't know that all of you will agree with this, but you should, one of the things that I've noticed over time that has changed about me is that the media I consume, I'm sick of cynical media, which is funny after we've cynically bashed a bunch of shit in this podcast. But my main goal with anything I do is to use that platform to uplift something at the end of the day, whatever it is. And in this case, it's the Crubcast. Hit the follow button, goddammit. But I really find myself leaning more and more towards genuine and, dare I say, sometimes wholesome content, like a Joe Pera. I've talked about Ratchet and Clank way too much in my lifetime as a content creator, but
Ted Lasso as well.
Ted Lasso. But Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, for example, is a game that is perfect for the era in which it released because it is a wholly non-cynical game, which is not what a lot of fans of Ratchet and Clank wanted. But that's what made Ratchet and Clank stand out, was that it was always the counterculture, and the counterculture now is wholesome media.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because everything has to be cynical and witty and Joss Whedon-y,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
When I was younger, right, the idea of playing a Kirby game and it's like, oh, it needs to be hard. Why isn't it hard?
Yeah.
And now today it's like, no, I love the new Kirby so very, very much.
Yeah. And even like all the old Kirbys, because I went back, I never played them before because I was like, what's the point? It's just an easy game. You really can't die most of the time. And when I went through in probably 2017, I went through a bunch of Kirby games, and I just fell in love with them because it was like, yeah, I'm just sitting down on my couch, turning my brain off and enjoying some bomb music, some bomb stupid abilities. You can kiss your best friend and gain health from it. Like it's pretty cool. You know?
You can. Hot.
Just having a good time. And it does seem like when you talk about what are your differences over 10 years, what things have changed, maybe it's just easier to kind of enumerate the things that have gotten worse, right? And say, I hate this thing now that I used to love. But there's certainly a lot of things that I love now that I would have hated back then. And well, yeah, I guess this has been a little bit of a downer podcast with we hate these things, but I think I love more deeply, if that makes more sense.
Yes, no, absolutely. And sorry,
no, go ahead.
Me too. The music that I like now, I love, and I'm addicted to it, and I will not stop listening to it. I have artists that are like, like super, super small on my Spotify that I will just bump their songs like over and over and over again. And I love it.
I was going to say, it's not just loving more deeply, it's hating the shallow. Mm-hmm. It's both ends of that spectrum. Like, you're loving more deeply in the literal sense of you care more about these things and you will evangelize these things, and that in turn gets more people to experience these things, because when you hear someone passionate about a thing, they're going to want to check it out if they trust your opinion, or they value your opinion. Mm-hmm. And in the same way, the reason that we push to the side an Assassin's Creed or a Far Cry 3 or a Halo or except for Sean, a Skyrim, all of these things is because when you look back, there's so many things and all those are games, but even to the same, like The Office is a shallow show, I'll say it. And that doesn't make it a bad show. It doesn't make Halo Infinite a bad game that it's shallow. It's a bad game for different reasons. But all of these things highlight... I lost my train of thought a little bit here. Forgive me. All of these things highlight the growth of media itself, is what I was going to say. Because especially in games were just games until 2012, when everyone said, wait, what if they are art? And that became a debate. And that debate was open and shut within that year. And from then on, it's been hitting the ground running with experiences that are back to being wholesome, or that are more thought-provoking, or that are more interesting in how they explore the mechanics, or even the ludonarrative, as much as we all love to overuse that word. And it's true in music too, because as music has gotten generally shallower, because we're starting to run out of chord progressions, as things have gotten shorter, the ones that do hit on a deeper level. Yeah, like a Joji, for example. I'll throw Joji out there. He's not wholesome. His music is not at all wholesome, and he's never been a wholesome person. That's depresso music, but it's good depresso music, and it's music.
But talk about growth over 10 years, though.
Yeah, imagine that guy 10 years ago, 2013, when he's Filthy Frank. That might be the best example of them all.
Oh, absolutely, dude. That's somebody I look up to so much, because Joji's music is music I could make, right? And that's
still a weird take. Still a weird take.
Not okay. Look, when I say like music that I can make, it's music that I can't make yet, right? And that's why I don't listen to that. Everything I have to unlock the skill tree differently from others. Because another thing, with that for me too is that you do tend to see a lack of maturity in certain places, in certain genres, in certain media, right? I didn't get into pop punk until undergrad, or which is where I learned how to sing, etc., etc. Tried to sound like Fall Out Boy, but I missed the mark, and I sound like Brendan Urie, Panic at the Disco type beat. And with that, you tend to see a lack of change, a lack of maturity, and a lack of cynicism, but in the unhealthy way, because these people still want to like live in middle school. But I was lucky that I didn't have that, because I came in late to the game. But anyway, sorry.
It goes back to what I said at the start, which is that if you haven't changed in 10 years at all, I kind of feel for you, because you should change in some capacity, even if it's minor, even if it's just the marginal things about how you treat people or how you see people. I mean, 10 years ago, the state of the world was very different, socially, politically. No matter how you cut it, it was a very different world 10 years ago. And I think that I'll say it. I think it's better now. I think it's worse in many ways, but I think overall there's more light, as much as there is more empathy, as much as there is a darkness that surrounds a lot of that nihilist Zoomer culture that we're now kind of leaning into as time goes on.
I think that's fake nihilism, though. I think all the Zoomer nihilism is like fake nihilism.
No, it's definitely
for
real.
Clout.
Those people want to die. With those Zoomers wanting to die, if you're a Zoomer, please make sure to hit the like button on this video before you die,
of course.
Yes.
Because if you don't, you'll go to hell before you die. As said by
I like that it's a sin not to like the Crubcast.
We are running up on time, so let's throw out the plugs for everybody. Nicco, where can we find your music that you will listen to because you made it?
It's actually true. You can find me at All Hail Buckets on all platforms. All Hail Buckets on Spotify, Apple Music, everywhere that you listen to music. The record that I just released a couple weeks ago is called No New Thoughts, so go check that out. It is about love. Yeah, that's it.
If that doesn't get you to help to listen to it, I helped on it, so you should listen to it if you like me.
That is true. Kevin contributed heavily to the narrative, and it is much better off for it.
The whole thing was a dare. It was a, hey, do a concept album, write a story that's not about you. And he did it. He did it.
Massive success, yeah, I would say so.
M, where can we find you?
Well, my YouTube channel is really cool, but rather than plugging myself, I'd like to plug Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio. We were talking about art earlier and how you should go enjoy and love things. This is maybe the best movie, and I don't know how you could ever do another Pinocchio after Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio.
As a Soulsborne, of course.
Okay.
Sean, where can we find you?
So you can find me at WolfKOSan on Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch. Yeah, and that's really it. And I'm all around everywhere else in random pictures and in your house.
He's in your walls, folks.
Sean lives in your walls. Yeah.
And as I said at the top of the video, you can find me at The Golden Bolt anywhere where you can find things that are named The Golden Bolt and not anywhere else. So if you want that, you can enjoy that. I made a video on stupid Wii shit, and it did really well, and you could watch that too if you want to. Or don't. Bye.